How's everybody doing? I'm going to go ahead and be walking through our bingo JavaScript game, and we're going to start off with the HTML section as the index. Okay, so obviously this is pretty basic for the HTML, starting for a template. I'm bringing in font awesome. I'm using Bootstrap. Bootstrap theme, and then from there I'm also bringing in animate, which is just a CSS stuff, and I'm sharing this. Shared CSS is something I have tied together with all my other games, so they all have consistency. Obviously, this is just Google Analytics. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. Here is the buttons for the game. As you can see, when you start it, let's say, for instance, up here, it would be up here. So they start off firing off the start game in whatever denomination they are. So that will place the bet and get the game started. This is our banner that shows of where everything is, any announcements of who won, what's going on with our betting, our money status. This is all there. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the next square button that gets us to the next button if in case we start the game, which would be right there. And the call list is going to be all the called squares we've already done through the bingo game. These are our players. Each player has an ID, and they also have their details underneath. And from here, we've got the, you see here, these are our rules. And I have the rules written down, pretty basic stuff. So this is just the on-off button visually for our hide and show rules. And down here, this is the footer that's going to be shared with all of my other games. Here you can see where my global alert lives. When called, it will show up with a message and a color. And down here is the footer, which has all the other games listed, themes, icons, so on and so forth. And this is just where I've got my bingo information from on how to play the game. All right, let's get back to the muscle of this actual game, which is into the JavaScript here and the functionality. And we'll be following along with the documentation of the wiki, which I've already put together, so I'll compile all this. So let's get started. I guess the best way to go is initially I'm going to start off from the top to tell you that these are all the things that kind of help the game run. I need to iterate through all these arrays to tell it what column it's in here, what player we're dealing with. These are the diagonal wins. In case I ever match these wins, then I get a diagonal win. These are things I've verified that I have. I'm not using that yet, but you never know in the future. These are the things that were called publicly. And this is something I need to reset at each time we go through a cycle from B to all the way to O, and then I have to recycle back. So I need to start it up here as 0, and then you'll see later on how I use that to apply the numbers per column. And each column in bingo, B is only allowed one number from start and one number end, so on and so forth for all of them, and that's why we're doing this. Okay, my announcement currently is going to be nothing, and I'm returning to run auto as false. I have an option. If I hit true, then you don't have to select the squares. It will do it for you, and I have that turned off. Okay, and this is with my money, and if I find that there's no money transferred over from local storage, then I start with 500. Pretty basic from all my games, as you can see, from a very familiar setPlayerMoney function that is used in all my games, how they pass money around. Okay, we're also going to be needing to set up, these are going to be representing my players. And they all start out at 0, and as they get through, they will be incrementing. When they get to 5, that means they have a win through the bingo game rules. And these things all get reset for each time we go through a player, they all get counted and then reset. These are all the variable wins here that need to be incremented. Okay, the way I've designed my documentation is basically, I've put it from the bottom to the top, because that's how the functionality actually works. So I'll start off here. Okay, let me go ahead and do one more thing. Okay, I'm going to go into the wiki so I can kind of read along with this, what we're doing here. So starting out, to start the game, we basically, we're going to set all the counters in the start position and remove all the alert successes. And this clears all the boards out. Once that's all been reset, we can go ahead and run the game. For the most part, I'm just going through however many players I have. Coincidentally, we could do as many players as we want. I just thought 4 was fine. And then once we've ran through each one and passed along that player, we go to see runGame and see what's going on. When runGame, as you can see, target is the player. And I'm going to be going through and clearing out everything so we can get started fresh from our last game. I'm going to clear out my HTML and UI as well as my arrays. Then I'm going to start a for loop through all my players. And we're going to go ahead and set them back to the alert primary and alert light, everything that needs to be done before the game starts. We'll go ahead and from there we're going to start walking through our columns and assigning them the applied correct amount of numbers. So each column, like I said earlier, is going to have a number applied to it, and so it's a start and a stop. So it'll be between 30 and 16 for the first column, 40 and 31, 31 and 45 for the next, 46 and 60 to the next, and so on and so forth. This is all going to be something that you basically, compile together, and then you write out. The first iteration will be the column ID, which would be possibly a B or an I or an N or a G or an O. And here, I'm starting to write the line items that this bingo actually is going to create. It looks like a board, but it's actually 5 ULs all in line, and each of the ULs has a line item, 5 line items plus the titling. And the first one we're going to be talking about for player 1 would be me. So I want to add a function in here which is called verifySquare. That doesn't need to be in any of the other squares for any other players, just mine. So what I've done is I've basically asked it, are you going for player 1? Okay, then I need to add these specific things for that. And otherwise, we'll go along and write the regular line item. And then from there, we'll build the HTML, apply it to my UI here, and then we do the startCalling function. Okay. So verifySquare is when I would click on one of the squares and I check and see if it's been called. I pass that square info through into this function, and so it's going to compile all the lists of all the players to first find out, hey, is this person playing even though the game's over? And I've done that by getting everybody's scores together, adding or compiling all the arrays up and seeing if there's a 5 in there. And if there is, I stop this thing and tell them, hey, somebody already won. Place up your bet up to the top. Otherwise, I realize, no, this is a real game going. And if it has been called, if the number I've clicked does call, I add alert success, like this. And you can see it turned red for 3 seconds, then it went away. So coincidentally, if I hit this one and it stays green, and that's all good. So you can click it on, if it has been called, it'll turn green. If it's not been called, it'll turn red. So that's kind of what's going on here. And then once I'm done verifying, I'm just going to go to the next one. So I'll do a startCalling. And that's kind of how I move on to our next function up here. StartCalling, I need to disable the button first so that if somebody clicks it, then I don't want them to, mess up my functionality and make this thing break. So I'm disabling the button just for it. As you can see, I enable it later on at the end of this function. But I'm going to run through all my columns, and basically we're going to create a call out to see if anybody has this in their board. And it has to follow the same rules as their board was built by, which is right here. Each column has a specific range of numbers it can have, and so that's how we know we're going to have to follow the same rules to call this out. I'm using the math random here, and I need to convert this to a string so that number can be officially brought into an ID for each square. Now I'm going to go ahead and see if we've already called this publicly, and if we have not called it, I'm going to move forward. That's why I'm using while, because I need it to be, as you can see, one more than it was a minute ago. I don't want any more than just one. So, but I can't add one that's already been there. So the only way I can do that is I go check. If it's something that has not been used, it gets added. If it's not, it does not get added, and the while iterates again until it is matched to what it needs to be, to the length it needs to be. Anyway, so here we go with a little bit of a for loop, and it just basically is coming through and telling me where to start and add success if we actually do find that that's correct. And let me see here. So first select, they must find their own squares and run valid auto is false. Okay. Yeah, okay. So as far as once these are called, though, we do need to push them out so they don't get called again. And as you can see, we're going to go ahead and put this through the list so everybody can see what's been called. So if you look back, you can say, oh, that one got called, and you can keep track. And then we add it to the UI here. As far as that concerned, once again, we do need to let it know where it stands and reset the column numbers up top, similar to what we did earlier. So that's why that's here. And let me see here. checkForBingo would be our next move. And now that we've called it out, we'll go running through every single square that has a success and see if it's green and then if it ties to our pattern. So we're going to go through checkForBingo function. We run the for loop through every player, and then we also go through every row, which is represented here. As going through each one of these players, I need to gather not only the row ID, which is basically just the iteration, and then I need to get, let me see here, I need to get that in the column ID, which is also, it's in the data set. So these two items will let me go ahead and start adding and upward ticking everything that needs to be. So if it has a B in it, I add a 1. If it has, up to the B array, and so on and so forth. Add a 1 if it has an I. If it has an N, add it to that array, and so on and so forth. Now here we're doing upticking based on our row numbers. And so if it happens to have a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, then we'll be adding to these rows here. Now we also do, these are all just going to be numbers. This get upticked. These will be pushes, as you can see here. If a diagonal win, I ultimately go find out, hey, has this been found out yet? Do we know that this is something that exists, and do we already have this? And if not, and we need it, I push it to that verify top left or verify top right array. And that length will tell me if they've gotten to 5 here. Now I need to go ahead and see, because this is basically going through iterations. This is one big iteration per player. I need to find out who the player is by looking through my iteration I. And then I can apply this check winners array to equal who is got what within this round. And then I find out, hey, is there a 5 in any of this check winners stuff? Because if so, I need to find out if it's me. If it is, then I'm going to add some money, and I won, alert success. And if it's not, then I lost money. But you can have multiple people win by doing this. It does not stop. And then we're going to go ahead and alert that this is what's happened. Someone has won, and there's the message that we applied for it. And then we kind of start doing a reset so we can get back to starting the game over. We need to reset our arrays and all of our ticks within this functionality up top. And for the most part, that's about it. I mean, as you can see, these are all things that need to be outside, and then they get reset when we restart the game down here. So they do live out here because they get applied to and referenced quite a bit. And so I keep it outside the function. Anyway, like I said earlier, this is the setPlayerMoney, which is where it's wildly impressive how easy it is to do a monetary function, adding and subtracting based on a win. And then you can take that, whatever the win or loss is, and pass that your balance from one game to the next by just using something very simple. I just have to say local storage in this case is, truly the winner here on how to run the setPlayerMoney. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this, and I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial.